What if the black swan is already here? We are all waiting for the black swan event. It's going to come in and destroy the markets because everyone's thinking everything's falling apart, understandably so. But what if the black swan is that the Fed has lost control? Because there is an implicit bias in the market that the Fed still has things under control. Despite the fact that I just did an interview with Nobody Special, despite the fact that they didn't quite know that people could withdraw their money very quickly through SVB because the internet didn't exist for that long, right? So they were like very surprised that withdrawals happened that fast because the internet just was invented yesterday. But what if nobody trusts the Fed in the market? Because there still is an implicit bias that the Fed has it under control. What happens when that mentality switches? Because I don't trust the Fed. I don't think the Fed has it under control. And your average person doesn't even think about the Fed. But what they do think about is bread and circuses. What happens when there's no more bread and circuses? Right? They are okay with things like being stuck in their house for a year because they're getting bread and circuses. But what happens when there's no more of that and we still have inflation? It's a big problem. And I want to take your attention to this article here from Zero Hedge that talks about that exact question. What if the Fed has lost control? Which I believe they have, by the way. I believe they have. They come out with these new tools and all that kind of stuff. But keep in mind, the market crashed in March of 2020. And the Fed did the ZIRP thing, zero interest rate policy, but it didn't recover. It didn't go back up until stimmies, money printed and pushed into the market. So it wasn't, remember, Fed is just interest rate policy and QE and maybe yield curve control, which I think is coming. But the market didn't recover in 2020 until stimmies were pushed into the market. So they're just front running inflation. All right. So I think that was a sign that the Fed has lost control. And why are these banks still failing? Because they came out with this new policy, right? This BTFP program where banks can push their bonds and get 100 cents on the dollar from the Fed. They can give it to the Fed, and the Fed will give them 100 cents if people are demanding their deposits. So why are banks like the bank the other day? Why are they failing? Because this policy was put in place. Why wouldn't they use this policy and not fail? They have other things on their balance sheet too, like crappy mortgages. Not just crappy mortgages, actual mortgages that are being paid by customers like me that are at 2.25%. Who wants to buy those? Right? Think about that. If you refinanced or bought in 2021, you have an interest rate below 3%. Who wants to buy those in an inflationary environment? You are guaranteed to lose money. Doesn't make sense. So these collateralized mortgages are much like the bonds, right? Because they can get collateralized mortgages today, they yield way more. So who in the right mind wants to buy them? If a bank has to sell them, they got a big problem. The bank needs the money. Reading from the article, the U.S. economy and its financial system operate under the implicit belief that the Federal Reserve controls the direction of the economy and finance. That, I believe, is the black swan. That belief, that implicit bias that they control this, is going to go away, right? And when that mental switch happens in the market, that this infinite money printer, in the short term, they can print prosperity. You can speculate in the market based off what the Fed is doing. That's why you see these FOMC meetings and the market goes up and down based off Jerome Powell's tone. The only reason that is happening is the market goes up and down based off money printing and easy liquidity, meaning lowered interest rates. It's not off fundamentals. The fundamentals don't exist. That's very important to understand. Looking at a company's balance sheet and saying, do they make money? Will I get cash on cash return? What kind of return will I get? That doesn't exist. What actually exists is, will interest rates go down so companies can take on more debt? And when that goes away, when the understanding that that isn't going to help the market anymore, just pumping out free money isn't going to help the market anymore, fundamentals actually matter, That's a black swan, in my opinion, where the mindset switches from in the market to, oh no, they don't have control of this. Does it seem like they have control of the banking collapse? Jerome Powell was just speaking at the FOMC the other day. He said we have control, and then another bank failed, like the same day. All right, further reading. The history of the past 30 years seems to support this belief. Every time a financial crisis has manifested, the Fed has saved the day, air quotes, with some new policy extreme, changing the rules, jacking up the balance sheet tenfold, and so on. Now their balance sheet is like $9 trillion, the Fed. The flaw in the confidence of the Fed's control is the three speculative bubbles that have inflated the burst in the era of the Fed control, 1995 to the present. We've all lived through that. The housing bubble, now we're in the everything bubble. And what happens when the debt was pushed up to the sovereign level in 2008? Now we have a big problem on our hands because we have this little thing called the debt ceiling. And we have inflation. And I've said before on this channel, the one bet that was made throughout the entire economy when it comes to people buying bonds, people buying stocks, every single bet that was made in the last 3-4 decades, including the government, was that we would not have inflation. Now inflation's here. What does that mean? People want real rates of return. So if they go into the treasury market and inflation's at 9 and the best yield they can get is 6 in the treasury market, that's better than holding cash, but they want real rates of return. Why would you buy a treasury when you're guaranteed to lose money? Doesn't make a lot of sense. But the treasury can't give you a real rate of return. Do the math. What is 10% of 32 trillion? It's 3.2 trillion. Then take a look at our tax receipts. It ain't good. The math is hot garbage. But we still operate in this world, this fantasy world, that the Fed has all this under control. Fundamentals of the market, like supply and demand, like making a profit, all those things don't matter. What really matters is just interest rate policy. We can move interest rate policy around and it creates productivity, see? And there's a lot of people that still believe that. They really do. And when that mindset switch happens in the market where people are like, hey, we've been getting high on our own farts over here. We don't really know what's going on. And the Fed lowered interest rates and the market is tanking. What's happening? Just like in 2020. When that realization comes, black swan. So the Fed's tried all kinds of tricks. For example, the Fed's trick to lower bond yields. We've talked about that. Eventually will be yield curve control, the buyer of last resort for government debt. Remember, government can't keep the yields high. They can't give you a real rate of return. So how do they keep demand high in that market to keep interest rates low? Well, we have this friend over here, the Federal Reserve, who can buy all of our debt, just like in Japan. All it does is buy time, folks. That's all this does. Makes the problem worse, as you know. Further reading, the confidence in the efficacy of the Fed policies can be understood as a buffer. It provides resilience and a backstop. The Fed put. A lot of people think that the Fed is trying to, or Jerome Powell is trying to end the Fed put. Like stop the market from thinking that the Fed is always here to save us. Which means a day of reckoning is coming. So if he actually is trying to put a death to the Fed put, meaning this like Pavlov's dog's response from the market, like the Fed raises interest rates, they're going to lower them. I know they're going to lower them, which everyone thinks all the time. As soon as there's a bump in the road, Fed's going to lower interest rates. What if he actually doesn't lower them? So the market's going to realize one way or another, either he lowers them and the market actually still goes down, or he doesn't lower them. And they're like, uh-oh. I've been conditioned to believe that anytime there's a problem, Papa Powell and the Fed comes in and just buys things and lowers interest rates and everything's happy duty. So either way you slice it, if they go traditional route, which is lowering interest rates, we're already having trouble, right? But they go to lowering interest rates, yield curve control potentially, or QE infinity. They go traditionally what they've done, which, by the way, that happened in 2019, right? Jerome Powell was raising interest rates and reverse course. He reversed course in 2019. Why did he do that? So why won't he reverse course again? So if he lowers interest rates and the market doesn't respond by going way up, we still have inflation. Now we have stagflation. There's going to be some realizations happening in the market. Market participants are going to go, wait a minute, this isn't supposed to happen. That's exactly what happened in 2020. Fed lowered interest rates. Didn't matter. We needed an injection of capital. We needed stimmies to go to all-time highs. So it says here, participants stop panicking as soon as the Fed comes to the rescue. Moments the Fed announces a new dovish policy, even if the policy has limited effect on the real-world conditions, the decline of the real-world efficacy is masked by the instant euphoria of the participants. So the underlying, the base layer, the foundation, if you will, isn't getting better. More goods and services for cheaper aren't becoming more prevalent. Companies aren't getting more cash flow. It's just more euphoria. It's more people speculating in the market. The greater fool theory. So it's not people looking at balance sheets and saying, oh, okay, this company is a good buy at this price. It is number go up, pandemonium. You guys saw that in the last couple of years, right? And it says here in the article, the decay of diminishing returns occurs under the radar. And then when everybody comes to the realization that everything's fake and you cannot print prosperity, what happens? The realization, everyone comes to the same realization at the same time, and they're like, oh no, and sell. So, yeah, I think the Fed obviously is losing credibility. But my point to you is, if you didn't understand a word I just said, is our whole economy, the dollar, the banks, everything, is a confidence game. And there's a lot of confidence in the Fed because they have infinity money, right? They're not a normal bank. They can print bank reserves to some extent, which means the dollar in the losses that they carry doesn't really matter to them. You can look at a balance sheet of a normal bank and realize, hey, they're insolvent. But Federal Reserve insolvency doesn't matter. But people trust that they will fix the problem by lowering interest rates. That's what they think. And if that actually happens in an inflationary world, does inflation go up or down? It goes up. And then people, little bits at a time, less and less people start to trust the Fed. Jerome Powell's going to come out and nobody's going to listen to him. Nobody's going to listen to him. They're already calling his bluff right now. He's like, yeah, we're not going to lower interest rates. Don't you worry. We're going to keep it up here till 2%. And the market goes, you're lying. You've already lied to us many, many times before. Remember when you said you're not even thinking about raising interest rates? You are lying. They're calling his bluff. And if the Fed reverses policy and says, okay, sorry about that, lower interest rates, inject liquidity, sorry, everyone could have free money again, and the market doesn't go up, what do you think market participants are going to think? They're going to think, oh no, the Fed does not have control anymore. This train is off the tracks, and the Fed ain't getting it back on. I'd love to know what you guys think in the comments below. I'll link that article down there as well. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.